This is probably one of the albums I have been the most uncertain of before going into it for this series. I've heard so many different thoughts and so many different things about it that I wasn't sure what to expect, which is why I've been very excited to talk about it myself. Welcome back to 10 Years Later, the series where I talk about albums from the 2010s that were either impactful to me, impactful to music in general, very popular, or just worth revisiting 10 years later for good or bad reasons. And as you can tell from the title, we've got a big one. Today we're going to be talking about the 2011 Lil Wayne album, The Carter 4. This was the 9th studio album from legendary Holly Grove Hollywood to Holly Grove to go Hollywood New Orleans rapper Lil Wayne, an artist who I have talked about plenty already in 10 Years Later. Last year I discussed 2 of his albums. The surprise jump into rock music that was Rebirth, which still gets a bunch of comments to this day. I'm a bit surprised with how hated that album is, how many people vehemently defend it in the comment section of that video. But hey, live and let live. I'm glad they like the album more than I do. As well as the more standard rap record, I Am Not a Human Being, which doesn't get nearly the same amount of comments. Not that that bothers me, just an observation. Either way, Lil Wayne is an artist with as many hits as misses in my eyes, and last year I found Rebirth to be a total misfire, and I Am Not a Human Being was a semi-improvement, but still a miss. Coming into this album though, I had a good feeling, given that it's part of his The Carter series, the iconic line of records that are usually among his best work. That is, until I saw what other people were saying about it. There have been some wildly mixed opinions on this album, and generally I started to feel a bit unsure of what to expect going into it. Sure, some of that disappointment might be rooted in the fact that it followed up on The Carter 3, an album that is not only considered one of Wayne's bests, but in some circles one of hip-hop's bests, but I still wasn't sure what to expect. Hell, 1 or 2 people in the comment section of my Rebirth video were saying that The Carter 4 was worse than Rebirth. Given that Rebirth was an album that caused me physical pain when listening to it, if The Carter 4 was going to be worse than that, I was fucked. Not making matters any better was the fact that, like many Lil Wayne albums, the track list on this felt pretty bloated. Listening to the deluxe edition of the album, this is an 18-track record stretching an hour and 11 minutes. And yes, I know that's a deluxe edition, but even the standard edition lasts over an hour. So then I listened to the album, and by the time I was done, I found it to be fine. Yeah, it wasn't too bad. It was actually a pretty good time. I do have some issues, and that length was a bit of a problem, but otherwise I enjoyed myself while listening to this. Intro kicks off the album with this very celebratory vibe with a loud booming instrumental and Wayne just kind of freestyling his verse. He does his usual thing of dropping wild ass punchlines. Who could forget see no evil, hear no evil, Helen Keller. I'm not totally in love with the slower flow in the verse, but it still kicks off the album with some good energy, letting you know that you're going to be in for a big wild ride. Blunt blowing really jumpstarts that. The song is a bit more low-key before kicking into something louder with some synths and trap drums. Wayne's flow is a little slower, but he manages to drop some of his goofy punchlines here, and I like his vocal tone throughout the song. It's charismatic and pretty funny, giving this an extra layer of enjoyability. There are plenty more highlights as well. Mega Man is one of those classic Wayne songs where he just goes hard as hell, dropping fast, emphatic flows over a wild beat. This is usually the type of Wayne that I enjoy the most, and this is another example. I also think the beat is extremely clever, and the way that it flips a sample of the original Mega Man theme song is pretty awesome. This is a banger among bangers on this album, and it shows Wayne perfectly in his zone. 6 Foot 7 Foot was a song that was everywhere back in the day, but it was one of those tracks that I mostly ignored. Hell, I didn't even know it was a Lil Wayne song or that it even had any rapping on it, because all I even remembered hearing back in the day was bum banana. Now that I can actually hear the entirety of the song, yeah, it's pretty fire. I think the sampling work here is fantastic, and the hook is pretty damn catchy, and obviously actually getting to hear Wayne go in on this one is great. He flows with a lot of energy and drops some of his silliest yet most memorable one-liners of his career. I bet a lot of people here are waiting for me to say it, but yes, real G's move in silence like lasagna. Add to it with a fire Corey Gunn's verse featuring a flow that's just constantly moving in every direction. You've got a banger of a song where it's easy to see why it's had the lasting impact it's had. She Will was also the one song I listened to quite a bit back in the day. This was actually one of the first rap songs I ever really got into, and I remember some people thinking it was weird that I liked this song because I didn't look like someone who enjoyed this kind of music. That's something I've heard plenty of and still hear now for that matter, and I mean, I understand why. Just look at me. Regardless, yeah, this song really grabbed me a lot. I like how grimy it feels, almost like it leans into rock sounds a bit. I noticed that Genius.com compared it to The Weeknd, and yeah, I suppose if the trilogy took on a bit more of a mainstream hip-hop sound, it would probably sound like this. Wayne delivers some of his most memorable flows on the album, and honestly, does it need to be said that Drake dropped an incredibly memorable hook on this? Come on, he's a hook master. Even if he doesn't get a longer verse, I think Wayne utilized him perfectly, making this another pitch-perfect collaboration between the two. How to Hate brings in T T-Pain to drop one of his typical auto-tune vocal performances. It's the kind of sound you expect out of T-Pain, but he still sounds good and a lot of his soul really shines through as he sings. The beat is really minimal, almost sounding like something Drake would do, and Wayne himself delivers a bit more of an understated performance that works well for the track. It took a few spins for it to grow on me, but I do actually quite like the song. Interlude is honestly a pretty nuts track too. Backed by the same beat heard on the intro, Wayne pretty much is a non-entity on the song as Tech 9 and Andre 3000 are the ones rapping here. Naturally, their flows are very fast and frantic, but they work amazingly, and it makes for an extremely memorable interlude. Even though it's only 2 minutes, there's enough here to make it fulfilling. John is a track that really goes in with its extraterrestrial themes as the instrumental sounds like something straight out of space. Clear reference to Wayne's feelings that he's an alien. Remember what he said on his last album, I am not a human being. I do like the vibrancy of the instrumental, and I think Wayne and Rick Ross are both well equipped to body this beat as well. These two usually come together and make some great tracks, and this is another example. President Carter has a very dark, plucky feel to it that a lot of the other tracks on here have, with a chorus sampling the inauguration of Jimmy Carter. Had to go with him because, you know, the Carter. Wayne himself gives a very committed performance as well, riding the beat perfectly, and some of his punchlines make me laugh a bit. Like that line where he says, "You rappers sweet, tiramisu." I haven't ever tried one, but is a tiramisu even that sweet? Like, it's a coffee dessert that has alcohol in it as well. Even with mascarpone, you would think it wouldn't be totally sweet. A MasterChef contestant nearly got eliminated from the show for making a tiramisu that was overly sweet. Sorry, I'm digressing. Foodisms aside, I really like the track. Now, with a track list that's as long and unwieldy as this, there's bound to be some downers. Even on some of my favorite Wayne records, he sure knows how to throw his share of filler into the mix. For example, Nightmares of the Bottom also has that plucky kind of beat, kicking off with some tiptoeing pianos while Wayne raps in a bit more of a somber way without anything resembling a hook. Once again, I'm not too crazy about some of Wayne's start-stop flows on the track, but I do think he does a decent enough job, and I think he does still drop some funny punchlines here and there. I did a bit of a double take at that line where he talked about fucking his attorney. Abortion starts with Wayne dropping this strange vocal passage featuring some weird auto-tune filters on it. Fortunately, he doesn't continue that weird sound throughout the song, though I can say it's a track I don't really love. Wayne himself has good flows, and I do like some of these soulful vocal passages in the background of the instrumental, but the hook on this one kinda kills it for me. It's not the worst thing ever, but it could have been a little bit better. So Special moves into that darker direction with a bit of a bigger, grimier, more echoing beat, as well as some more plucking synths in the background. Wayne's verses don't really stand out to me compared to some of his other ones here, and I think the only thing that really does stand out to me is John Legend's hook. It helps that I could listen to him sing all day, but he's the part of the song that I enjoy the most. Otherwise, I could do without this one. How to Love is another example of Wayne going for some genre bending, making an acoustic track. I know, Lil Wayne did that. I know this is one of those songs a lot of people love to clown, and I totally see it, but at the same time, I don't think it's absolutely horrid. I think there were good intentions on the song, and I appreciate the overall more mellow mood of it a lot. The only thing that loses me on it is that Wayne just doesn't feel like the right vocal presence for a track like this. His voice feels a little too frail, and the auto-tune doesn't flatter him much either. To be honest, if Drake was the one singing on top of this, I think it would work. As it is, I feel like it just doesn't suit Wayne. I think I just don't hate it like everyone else does because I can see and appreciate the effort. It's good as a bit of a freestyle-like track where Wayne teams up with both Drake and Jadakiss. The beat feels a little bit generic to me, almost like a lot of what else is on the album, and it's probably one of the few non-poppy tracks on here that I could do without. The performances aren't too bad. I thought Drake's verse was especially solid, but this is another one of those tracks that overuses the slow flows to the point where it kind of loses me. Fortunately, the album finishes strong with the outro. This actually has no Lil Wayne on it, and while it's a posse cut, it features no members of Young Money or Cash Money. The song features all of Bun B, Nas, Shine, and Busta Rhymes all rapping over the same beat we heard on intro and interlude. All of them go extremely hard on the song. I especially enjoy the fast flows of Busta Rhymes and the rhyme schemes of Nas, making this a really strong finisher to the record. Except it's not really the finisher. While it's called outro though, there are 3 bonus tracks on here that I did listen to. Most of why I wanted to listen to the bonus tracks was because I wanted to hear Mirror, given that it's one of this record's bigger singles. It's definitely a very introspective cut for Wayne. He reflects on himself and his history with drugs over a very minimal, almost R&B leaning instrumental. Again, it sounds a bit like a Drake beat. Wayne's downbeat performance actually really works for the song, and Bruno Mars delivers a smooth chorus as well. It's weird hearing a younger Bruno here, but he still sounds awesome and makes this a solid single. I like The View plays like a standard Wayne song, bit of a mid-speed flow, loud and emphatic beat. It's honestly kind of forgettable. It doesn't do much unique compared to many of the other songs here, and this this was one of those tracks where I heard the hook, thought it was a verse, and then was like, oh, that was trying to be the chorus? It's just not really anything that stands out to me. Two Shots fully closes out the album with another instrumental that almost sounds extraterrestrial. Wayne's verses aren't too bad as his flows bounce and weave in a few interesting ways, but again, the chorus is pretty forgettable. There's a point on the song where Wayne says that he feels like he could be doing better, and I think he could have been doing better on the hook. I wish he chose Mirror to end the deluxe edition of the record on. Overall, this wasn't too bad. I was under the impression that I was stepping into something really awful with this thing, given some of the reception I heard about it, but honestly, I've heard far worse from Wayne. Honestly, this thing was pretty good. Is it the deepest or most timeless project I've ever heard? No. Does it scale the heights of Wayne's bests? Nah, I wouldn't say that. But otherwise, it's still a very solid record. Most of the production on here sounds pretty solid, even though there are some moments where Wayne might take some genre-based detours where he sounds a little in over his head. And when Wayne is focused in, he shows why he's such a dynamic and interesting performer. He delivers very interesting and catchy flows, and whether his bars are deep or intricate, he still knows how to produce some funny, memorable one-liners and punchlines. He also has an ear for good features, which is good news because this album is loaded with them. I think my only issues are that yes, some of the detours can feel a bit like they should have been done by another artist, and the length is a bit unwieldy, but otherwise this was pretty enjoyable. It's definitely a piece of early 2010s radio rap. I've even seen some call it the peak of radio rap, but as far as radio rap goes, this blend of it still sounds good today and does enough to elevate it beyond feeling like a relic. It's not top tier Wayne, but it's definitely far from the bottom, and there's enough good here to be worth a listen. Back in 2011, the fact that I liked a few tracks off of this may have made me enjoy at least some of the record. Listening to it now, yeah, it's not bad. If I had to put it on my scale, I'd probably even give it a good rating. I don't think it's Wayne's finest hour, and following up on the Carter 3 was obviously gonna make it a bit disappointing, but all in all, it's a solid album. But that's just my opinion on this record. What did you guys think about it? Did you listen to it back in 2011? Do you still listen to it now? Did you love it back then? Hate it back then? Do you still love it now? Do you still hate it now? Are you just completely indifferent towards it? And where would you rank it among the Carter projects? Whatever your thoughts and opinions and experiences are, leave them down in the comments below. Let's keep this civil and have some fun as we like to do. If you guys want to hit like and subscribe and support some of my other ventures that I have linked in the description, thank you. If not, it's no big deal. I totally understand. And as soon as I turn this video off, I'm going to film my last August 10 years later video, which is going to be on David Guetta's Nothing But the Beat. I know, pretty exciting. So stay tuned for that, but until next time, thank you guys for watching. I hope you enjoyed, and I will see you in the next video. Peace.